Joyce Kelly, and I am presenting today with Diane. I have had 22 years experience in transition working for Arlington Public Schools, and this is really my passion. I also am a coordinator of the Spread program at Nativity Church. And I want to thank Porter Charities for inviting us, and it's wonderful to be with Diane today presenting. She's been a friend of mine for years, and she is an amazing gift to this population of our students. Okay. Transition planning is futures planning. When you think about a child coming to aging out at age 22, it can be overwhelming. This is why the training must start early on, where you have time to explore and involve the child in the planning. And you can see on the slide what early planning can help prevent. It reduces stress, mental health, and you can go through the list and you'll understand what we are trying to do today to get the information out there to the parents and the students and teachers who are on with us. What are your hopes for your child? This is what I would ask a parent if we were in person. What's for your child's future? And the transition plan is the roadmap to your child's post-secondary life. To have a successful plan, you will need to gather important information about your child. So the earlier you start with this, the better. And we're going to show you some ways to gather this information. Next slide. First, you have to understand either your child has an IEP if they are in Catholic high school, or they have the ICEP, which is the Individual Catholic Education Plan. So you should be aware of which one your child has. Where do you start to gather this information? Begin with a very relaxing conversation with your child, asking them some of these questions that are on the screen. And this will give you information that you really can use when you're starting to develop this plan. We call this data. You know, what activities does your child enjoy out of school? What's their favorite hobby? Hobby can lead to the future with maybe a career plan. What's their favorite school activity? Do they know a strength, an interest, a preference, or a need? This is important, and there are ways that you can get the children to be able to see what those questions lead to. And also a possible career. What do you think about doing down the road? And the following link, and you'll be getting these PowerPoints, but the links are live, but it takes too much time today to go through each one. I just want to show you, this is the one pager that you will be, when you click on that, you'll be able to pull up. And let's see if you can see this. And what it is four columns, and the children will fill in what are their strengths. So you'll help them to develop the information, their preferences, interests, and their needs. So this is really the starting point. Again, we're looking, how do we gather information about our child? So the next slide. The next slide has some other documents and materials that you can use for your child. The first one is the Parent Transition Survey. So we're getting the parents into this. This is important. This questionnaire is a way for the parents to document the transition needs and expectations of their child's future, because there are questions in here that will lead to that information. Another one is the PTSI Life Skills Checklist. And this is a document, you can click on the link and it says, so these are different life skills that they're going to ask the child if they, as you're filling it out, can they do they need more practice? Are they going to start teaching them this, or is this ongoing? Does not open the door to strangers or let strangers in. So there's a life skill in there. Another one, can they make a grocery list? Look for items on the list in the store online. So this is from PC, and this is what the checklist looks like. And it's about 6 pages. So you could take your time doing this. You go through it and you share it with the teachers at school, so they are also aware of what the students' levels are for their life skills development. Another one is an employment checklist. And this also has different aspects of or specific skills of their employment. And you start now, and this is something you can continue working on. One question they ask is, does the child have a resume, including previous jobs, even volunteer positions, anything that they do? to start developing the resume now with the child. You want them involved, and the resume is what they would develop and have if they ever go on job interviews, even for volunteer jobs. Another skill would be participate in volunteer work, part-time jobs, and on-the-job training. Volunteer work helps the students develop work readiness skills. So it's important you think about ways that they can start volunteering. So that is from the employment checklist. And then the last one on this particular page is called the Pictorial Interest Inventory. This is online, and when you click on it, you'll see pictures come up, pages. Each page has 3 jobs, and they will look and see which one do they think they would enjoy doing. It also is a good way to develop vocabulary, interest, going through the different jobs, getting them to understand what the different jobs mean. And at the end of the survey, you're taking notes of which ones they're checking off that they like. And there's a way to chart it. And then after you have all the answers on the checklist, it says which of the key letters, A, B, C, all the way to H, because those are the letters that are under the pictures. Which ones did they get the highest score in? So let's say it's food services, C. If they had enough checks in pictures with the letter C, then for food services, you would look at the different, because it's designed to, structured around 8 different career fields. So under food services, these are the different jobs: a line cook, a server, dishwasher, busboy, cafeteria worker, prep chef. So these are just ways to get the children to understand different types of jobs that are out there. And again, explaining them to what skills are involved, and that you can work with the school to work with this one too. Okay, next slide. Early planning and student advocacy. This is a word we're going to use a lot through this presentation. And these together equal improved well-being. Again, this is a mental health workshop, but we're finding that a lot of stress, anxiety is because we don't know what's going to happen to our children. So you want to start with the early planning. The transition plan includes the students' dreams, their hopes, or we call them their post-secondary goals. What they hope to do after they finish school at age 22. Their ideas regarding education or training, employment, independent living. Those are their dreams for the future. And it's important that we talk about that with them. What supports will they need? Identified outside agencies that will offer some supports that Diane will get into later. Future planning begins with the end in mind. If somebody says to you, I love animals, I want to work in a veterinarian's office. They could be a vet tech or a different level job within a vet's office. So the end is going to be they'll be working with animals. What can we do now to start planning towards that? And also bringing in your life skills that they need to continue to develop and their employment skills. Advocacy is a must. Research shows when a student takes an active role in shaping his or her future, it can encourage physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Individuals who do not speak up feel overwhelmed, begin to show signs of stress. They feel like they're being shortchanged. Why are people making decisions for me when it's about me? Next slide. Transition planning. It is a process that evolves over time. Takes sometimes years to develop. This is why we say the state says start at age 14. You can start even earlier. You can start in middle school, elementary school, giving them jobs and chores to do. The student who participates in his or her own planning develops, there's that term again, self-advocacy skills. And developing these skills begins when you give a child a choice. Give them 2 objects and say, which one do you want? They're making the choice. They're telling you what they want. We're beginning to develop these skills. Self-advocacy has 3 points. The student understands their needs. The student knows what supports are available, and the student can communicate their needs. This is where it's important that we do not skirt around the issue if they have a disability. The child is who we focus on, who happens to have this disability, but let them hear it. The more they hear it, the more they accept it, and they know it's not something that they should be afraid of. Benefits of self-advocacy helps to ensure the child's needs will be met, and the child will know what his needs are. Allows the child to be in control of their life as much as possible. Can lead to improved health and self-esteem. Increases the child's confidence, which leads to performing better in the world, in work, in school, in social life. Empowers a child to finding solutions to problems that others may not even see. Okay, next slide. Nothing about me without me. Again, this whole process is about the student, not about the mother, the father, the siblings, or the teachers at school. A student's participation in all meetings will help to develop, that term again, self-advocacy skills. Encourage the student to talk about what he or she hopes to be doing after high school. But how will they get there? Well, let's start to develop the plan. You start with, like we said at the beginning of the presentation, getting data from the child, information, assessments, and the schools can help you with this. Listening to the students' future dreams, post-secondary goals. What do they see themselves doing for education or training, employment, independent living? Even children that are nonverbal can be working on this. You get them to use whatever means they have to communicate what they're wanting to say. Matching courses necessary to prepare students for post-secondary life. Identifying agencies that can help them once they age out and they're on their track into the world. And Diane can talk about that. Now, here's an example of some of the post-secondary goals. Remember, that means after high school. If a child says they can go to college, community college, training programs at colleges for students with ID, like the one at George Mason, it's called the Life Program, and attending day programs. And as you get into the services, you'll understand more what the day programs are. A post-secondary goal for independent living, using public transportation. You don't want them sitting home, and you're not going to be driving them around all the time, and they're not going to take Uber. It's too expensive. They need to learn public transportation, and there are vendors that will help with developing these skills. Travel training, moving in with a friend. They might tell you that. That's their post-secondary goal for independent living. Okay, if they're going to do that, they have to learn how to do budgeting, shopping, some cooking, cleaning, organizing their life, learning how to be responsible for medical appointments, opening a checking or savings account, shopping, preparing meals. This is what we hope they'll be able to do when they are adults in the world post-secondary. So you start now preparing for it if they say they want to learn public transportation or any of the others. Another example of a post-secondary goal, DARS. DARS stands for the Department on Aging and Rehabilitative Services. That agency will work with your child if you meet the criteria for job support, or supported employment would be another agency would work with that. So these are just examples of what the post-secondary goal could look like for employment. And Diane will get into that in her discussion. Your child's plans or dreams for post-secondary life. The post-secondary goals are what they are working at now to achieve after they age out. Some ideas may sound unrealistic, but the plan is about what the student wants, not what anyone else wants. Their ideas, plans, or dreams will change as part of a child's maturing and developing awareness and new interests. And that's not only for children with disabilities, that's for any student who is looking to see where they're going to be in the future. Again, the student's participation in all meetings about them helps to develop their self-advocacy skills. You should not be holding a meeting without the student being present. Example of a plan of a student interested in medical field. Okay, let's say you have somebody who wants to be in the medical field. For their post-secondary education and training, if this student wanted to be a certified nursing assistant, they would enroll in a program and learn the skills to become certified. So that would be their training goal. For their independent living, they would have to learn to take public transportation. Otherwise, they couldn't get to the training and to the job. For employment, DARS, again, the Department for Rehabilitative Services, would assist the student once they graduate and take the certification test, help them with job development, finding a position. Once they get the job, they will be with them for a short period of time for some job support, but DARS does not stay indefinite. Next slide. Transition options in public school. As you're coming up on your child graduating at the high school, the Catholic high school, they're going to be getting a certificate. If they are not getting a diploma, a standard or an advanced diploma, and they're getting a certificate, they will be eligible to return to the public school, meet with the committee, an IEP team committee, and see what options the public school is offering that the student, your child, can attend from the point they graduate from the Catholic high school until age 22. Each county public school system has different options. You do not decide. It's a team meeting, an IEP meeting. So what you do is, if I had a child that had an IEP at the Catholic school, it's one that they came with and we continue to negotiate, then for that child, we would contact this base school registrar and say, I want to have a meeting. And then you would come together and have a new IEP meeting to see what the committee feels would be appropriate. For someone who has this Catholic school IEP, you have to go back to the public school, set up an appointment, and they would have a local screening committee hearing. That's where everybody comes together and they're pretending like the student never had an IEP. Maybe they did when they left the public school, but they have to redevelop it. The meeting is to determine, does the student meet the criteria for an IEP? Then they would develop the IEP, and then the team with you and the child would decide what programs would be available and would they be appropriate for that program. So this is very important. Don't wait until you're coming up on leaving the Catholic high school. Talk to your individual school special services coordinators and arrange to have this done early on in their last year. Next slide. Building social connections. It's so important, even as we were listening to Mark before the keynote speaker, he talked about how important it is that students feel connected in the community or with friends. And when they're going in attending school through the Catholic schools, it's amazing what they have with friendship and buddies. And it's a beautiful life for them. That will come to an end. And we don't want those social connections to not be there for them. And there's a link here that this is from the ARC of Northern Virginia. And it's a list of different programs, clubs that the students can reach out to. One would be an example, Art Stream. This is for people interested in theater. Another one would be the Independence Center of Northern Virginia. If you reach out to them, they will do travel training. They will come meet your child and take them out in the community, teach them training. Another one is Stomping Ground, is another link on this list. And they build inclusive residential communities for housing. And I encourage parents to reach out to them and find out what it's like. You may not want to think about your child living in an apartment someday, but it would be good to find out what these programs are like. And then we also have the Special Olympics is on the list. And another one is Capernaum. This is part of Young Life, but then they have a special group for student with disabilities. This is a wonderful social opportunity for your son or daughter to continue being in the with their friends, because we don't want that to end when they leave high school. Okay, the next slide. Religious and spiritual opportunities. And if you listen to the keynote speaker before, he was talking about the role of the church and what we can do to make our students, and they're no longer little, feel welcome and inclusive. In the Diocese of Arlington, we have a program called SPREAD, Special Religious Development, and it's for children ages 6 through, you can go up, I have some in mind at 20, 21. We have a program at Nativity, and there are programs throughout the diocese in, I think, around 13 parishes. It's a religious education program. Your children have gotten their religious education at the high school, but it's important that you know this exists. And what it is each child is assigned a special friend, a volunteer who is always there with them. And they have the meetings we meet twice a month. Nancy Emanuel, Dr. Emanuel, is the coordinator of special services for the diocese. If you go to that link and reach out to her, you can talk to her about if you want to start some type of religious program in your parish. Some other things that we try to do, then we have Hearts of Fire, which is a program out in Manassas at Sacred Heart for older children. I'm sorry, All Saints, for older children. It's a social opportunity with a spiritual accent to it. Under the religious, some of the things that we do in Nativity to make our children feel inclusive are, we have them as greeters. Some of them are altar servers, helping volunteering in different ministries. Think about ways that you can get your children involved in your own parish. And my last slide is celebrate their achievements. Remember, they are graduating too, just like all the other kids. And we need to focus on letting them know how proud we are. We know the obstacles that they've had to overcome, the challenges, the loneliness, the feelings of exclusion. But they are motivated, and they need to be told and see how proud everyone is of them, their family, their parents, and also recognize your child's accomplishments. When they're ready to age out or graduate, have a graduation party, just like all the other children are having. Have special events, create memories for your children so they can tuck them away and someday look back and say, I did it. Thank you very much. And now, Diane.
Thanks, Joyce. So I just want to introduce myself. I'm Diane Monnig. I'm the Director of Programs at the ARC of Northern Virginia. I want to tell you a little bit about the ARC of Northern Virginia for those of you who may not be familiar, and let you know some of the resources that we have. So every ARC is a little bit different. Our ARC is the local ARC. Here we serve Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, kind of a little bit Loudoun, a little bit Prince William too. But every ARC is a little bit different. Our ARC is primarily an education and advocacy ARC. So we do a lot of outreach, a lot of webinars. Even though each ARC is a little bit different, our mission is all the same, which is basically to promote and protect the human rights of people with disabilities and support their full inclusion in the community. So, as I mentioned, our big kind of overarching program is Transition Points, which provides education to individuals and their families. So we do this by providing lots of written resources. I have 3 guides pictured there on the slide. Those are our part of our Transition Points program, where we provide information across the lifespan. So these 3 in particular are the ones that focus on transition. The yellow one there is about transitioning from school to adult services. The green one is about entering the world of work. And finally, that orange one is about housing. We also have another one on aging. All of these are available to download from our website and are available in 6 different languages. We also do lots of webinars, just like this one today, and they're all archived on our YouTube channel. We also offer a transition series every fall. So I'm going to talk to you a bunch about future planning topics, and I'm only going to spend about 3 minutes on each one. At the transition series, we spend an hour to an hour and a half on each topic. Then we also offer Transition Lunch and Learn twice a month. This is a virtual roundtable where we provide information. The second Transition Lunch and Learn of the month we have with an expert. The first one is with me. The second one of the month is with an expert. The one coming up is with LaVoice Reed from the Arlington Community Services Board to talk about their services. We also have an information and referral portal on our website. So anytime you have a question, you can type it in there and get a response. And we also have a resource library, which again, all of the things that I'm going to talk about today, we have really in-depth fact sheets, 1-pagers, 2-pagers on that provide more information. We also provide advocacy. So both local and state advocacy, we meet with legislators and families. Then we also provide self-advocacy. People First for Young Adults is a group that I facilitate. It's for young people in transition, so ages 14 to 26. And then we have People First, A Life Like Yours Toastmasters group, which is a real Toastmasters chapter. They work on public speaking and legislative issues. And then we also have some services. We do provide support coordination for people who have a DD waiver. I'm going to talk more about what that is later. And this is, we contract with local community services board to provide this service. We also provide guardianship of last resort through a grant we have with the Virginia Department of Aging for people who have absolutely no one in their life to provide support and no funds. We also have a special needs trust program, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. And then finally, we have our Tech for Independent Living program. Our team has created an app called Arc to Independence, where we provide general and customized lessons for people around learning and improving skills in daily living, employment, safety, and travel training. Okay, so that's just a little bit about our resources. So Joyce did a fantastic job of explaining like big picture and finding out how individuals thinking about the goal with your end in mind. What do you want your child's life to look like? What do they want their life to look like? And all of the things that will help them get there. How do you think about planning? So I'm going to share with you a little bit about once you leave the school system, what are the things that you have to think about to make all of these things happen? So once you leave the school system, everything is based on eligibility, and everything is specific. Application and eligibility is specific to that agency. And it's all based on funding availability. And that can make you feel like that poor lady right there. So even though that's maybe how the parent feels, the young individual is thinking about graduating, that they want to work, that they want a meaningful day. They want to have friends, boyfriends, girlfriends. So how do we make all of that happen? Okay, so I'm not going to read. I put this together. This is kind of a checklist of things that you should think about doing. I'm not going to read the list to you here. All of the ones that are highlighted in yellow, we're going to talk about today. But aside from those things that are highlighted in yellow, other things you want to think about is getting a government issued ID if you haven't done that yet. Applying for Metro Access, which is a door-to-door paratransit service. As Joyce mentioned earlier, you want to think about how is your child going to get around. So maybe you want to apply for that Metro Access card. And again, as Joyce mentioned, maybe you want to do travel training and apply for a reduced fare card. And then again, Joyce went into this a great deal, supporting your young adult in developing good self-advocacy and good independent living skills. That's going to help in every facet of life. And some other things you want to think about, I do want to mention for those of you, again, who may be unfamiliar with the ARC, we have a really good newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks that lets you know the different webinars and resources that we're offering. So I would really suggest that you sign up for that. Another thing that I'm not going to talk about too much today that Joyce also mentioned is thinking about post-secondary options. So maybe exploring 2 or 4-year colleges, the Mason Life program. Again, we have a lot of information about that on our website, and I'm happy to answer any questions around that. But all of those things, again, highlighted in yellow, we're going to talk about. Okay, so first, I do want to ask real quick, how many of you are on the waiver wait list? If you could just type it into the chat, that would be awesome. Or just say yes or no if you're on the waiting list. Oh, yay, I see a lot of yeses. Very good. Wonderful. Oh, that's great. Okay, so most of you are. So I'll explain this, but I won't go too much into the application process if you're already on the list. So that is fantastic. Again, I just want to remind everybody, if you have a question, please put it in the chat box because I don't want you to forget about it. But we will take questions. We'll leave about 10 minutes at the end to take questions. So this is great. I won't go through. I've put the numbers up there, but many of you have already applied. So as you already know then that the local community services board is the point of entry for a waiver. And there are 3 developmental disabilities waivers. The community living waiver, that's the most robust waiver. That's the only waiver that provides 24/7 group home support. And then there's the family and individual supports waiver. That's that middle tier waiver. And then the building independence waiver. That's for someone who needs the least amount of supports. And waivers cover a menu of services to enable you to live successfully in the community. So everything from employment and day supports to respite to environmental modifications, residential services, nursing care, community coaching, a variety of different services, and it is for the lifespan of the individual. I have the eligibility criteria listed there, where the individual has to show functional need in 3 out of the 8 categories that are listed there. I won't read those off. The individual must also have a developmental disability diagnosis, and then the financial eligibility criteria, which means that the individual has a resource cap of $2,000. So that means no more than $2,000 in their bank account. And the individual can't earn, and this is for this year, more than $2,829 per month, which is 300% of the SSI amount. In a little bit, we're going to talk about what do you do? What do you do if your individual has more than $2,000 in their bank account? So as you are well aware, there is a waiting list for the waiver, and all of the waivers have a shared waiting list. And wait time is unpredictable because it's based on urgency of need. And there's 3 waiting list tiers. Priority 1 means you need services within 1 year. Priority 2 needs services within 1 to 5 years. And priority 3, you need services in over 5 years. So those priority 3 individuals are children mostly who are in school. They're pretty stable. They're receiving school supports and they live at home. So there's a couple of things that you can do while you're on the waiting list for a waiver. You can apply for IFSP funds annually. We like to use a lot of acronyms. IFSP stands for Individual and Family Support Program. And you can apply for these funds annually for up to $1,000. And they can be used for a variety of different things, assistive technology, respite, camp, classes, a variety of different uses. You can also apply if your child has a medical or a nursing need. You can apply for a CCC plus waiver. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. So a benefit to living in Northern Virginia, in Fairfax, Arlington, and Alexandria specifically. Once your child leaves the school system and they're on the waiting list for a waiver, your child would be eligible for funds through the Community Services Board that's paid for through your local tax dollars. And they'll provide employment services, group supported employment, and day support. So even though you're on a waiting list, the CSB will provide that support service. If you live in Fairfax or Arlington, you can also use those local CSB dollars to utilize what's called self-directed services. So I'm going to talk in a little bit about the different employment providers and what they offer. But if at some point you're looking at these different employment providers and you're thinking, this is really not a good match for me, and I want my child to have a different kind of day, maybe they volunteer 1 day a week, maybe they work 2 days a week. What does that look like? You can utilize self-directed services funds to hire a companion and kind of manage that day and make your own schedule. Just a little note, as I mentioned earlier, the waiting list is based on urgency of need. So as things in your life change, Your child is experiencing more behavioral challenges, medical needs. You as the parent are having more medical needs, loss of a job. These are all things that you want to communicate to your support coordinator, because this will move you up higher on the wait list. So very important to maintain communication. So I did mention that CCC Plus waiver. That's the Commonwealth Coordinated Care Waiver. That waiver provides a very short menu of services. You must have a medical need. You apply through the local Department of Social Services. And it's a very minimal amount of service. So 56 hours a week just on personal care. But there is no waiting list for this. So if that is something that you may be your child may be benefit from, that's something you should explore. So also Joyce mentioned the Department of Aging and Rehab Services. So as I mentioned, the waiver provides that long-term support services. DARS is very short-term, very minimal hours. So while you're still in school, so this is eligible to any student, all they need to be is a student between the ages of 14 and 22 and have a disability. And they are eligible for pre-ETS, that's employment and transition services. There's no waiting list for this services. You can use it multiple years while your student is still in school. And they do those 5 services that are listed there. And the idea is basically the better prepared they are while they're in school, the more successful they'll be once they leave the school system, to be prepared for work. And some of those things are done with DARS counselors. Some of them are done, they contract with employment service providers, and some of them are done individually or in small groups. Then the other service for DARS is what's called vocational rehabilitation services. And this has a more in-depth eligibility process for bigger application. But the whole idea of VR services is to help someone get ready for a job, find a job, and keep a job. So they help with job seeking, job development, that initial job training, and then they fade away after that. So very short-term, very limited services. DARS also provides a lot of services at their campus in Fishersville, Virginia, called the Wilson Workforce and Rehabilitation Center. They do vocational evaluation, vocational training there, medical rehabilitation, and they have a very popular driver instruction program there. I'm going kind of fast because I want to leave time for questions. So you're all going to get these slides with all of this information on it. So I mentioned before the adult service providers. So sometimes you'll hear them called employment service organizations, sometimes vendors, but there are many in our area. Some are very small that only provide individual supported employment supports. Some are large where they provide day support, group support. So we have a list on our website of all the different service providers in our area. I would recommend Googling them, doing some informational interviews with them, finding out about the services that they offer. So I think sometimes it's really difficult because this is a whole new world to understand how all of these different entities connect. So I did this chart. I'm never sure whether it makes things better or more confusing. But those adult service providers are right in the middle, and they pretty much will take money from anywhere, from the CSB through those local tax dollars that I mentioned earlier, through DARS for those short-term supports, through from the Medicaid waivers for those lifelong supports. And they also do accept private pay for very minimal services like job coaching services. Obviously, a day program would be cost prohibitive, but if maybe you need a job coach for a limited amount of time, they will accept private pay. The next thing you want to consider at this time is applying for supplemental security income, or SSI. You apply for this the month after your child turns 18. And this is cash-based monthly assistance to be used for primarily rent and food. Again, you have to show a resource limit of only $2,000. One of the things they're going to ask you when you go on the interview is, do you charge your child room and board? answer is absolutely yes, because otherwise they're going to deduct automatically a third from that $2,000. We have a lot of information in our resource library on applying for SSI. We have a sample room and board agreement and how to determine rent. I'm not going to go through all of this. These are some Social Security kind of tips and tricks. So we'll just share this with you later. I do want to talk about really quickly special needs trusts. We talked a lot about the resource cap of $2,000. A special needs trust should be part of your overall estate planning. So if you want to leave money to your child and still have them eligible for public benefits, you would want to put this money into a trust. And there's two types: a family funded trust, which is just that money you leave to your child, and a self-funded trust. And that's something you would want to use if your child already has money come directly to them, like maybe from a lump sum Social Security check, legal medical settlement, that kind of thing. A child support can all be directed into a self-funded trust. And we have a pooled trust at the ARC, which means the money is pooled together for investment purposes, but everybody has their own account. And then there's also an ABLE account, which is in Virginia, it's called ABLE Now. It's a 529 account. You open it up all online. Some big differences is that you can only put $18,000 per year into an ABLE account. It's tied to the gift tax, and only the first $100,000 is not considered for SSI purposes, whereas a special needs trust, you can put any amount in there. And then I want to talk, this is a question we get lots and lots from families. My child is turning 18. I understand I'm supposed to get guardianship. How do I do that? So I want to just say that guardianship should always be looked at as a last resort. It is the most restrictive option. So what are some of the things that you can put in place before looking at the most restrictive option? So definitely completing HIPAA forms so that you can talk to your medical physicians. Power of attorney, education power of attorney, medical power of attorney. These are all forms that you can download from the Disability Law Center of Virginia. You can customize them and have them notarized, and then provide these to doctors and other people that you're working with. Limited guardianship means that you retain certain rights. So again, we're moving kind of down the spectrum of most restrictive. So limited guardianship, what I mean by that is sometimes you retain certain rights. Most of the time, what people want to retain is the right to vote and the right to drive, if that's something that they're interested in. You can see the fees there. It's very expensive to do guardianship, and it must be done with an elder law attorney. There has been a national movement over the last few years around this idea of supported decision-making and building a circle of support to help your child learn to make good decisions. And you can use that with any type of legal supports. So thinking about who are the people that your child can go to when they have questions. And this could be a mix of caregivers, paid and unpaid people, family members, neighbors, friends, other support people. And the idea around it is that everyone has the opportunity to make decisions, make choices, make mistakes, and learn from them, and hopefully grow in their ability to make good decisions. I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to kind of leave it there. This is just a list of our different resources that we have. Some of them linked to our webpage. Joyce mentioned Peetsy. And then I'll just mention one other tool, Charting the Life course, that helps people kind of think big picture about what are the goals they have for their child. So with that, I'm going to and then both of our contact information is there. So I want you to feel free to reach out anytime with questions. So I'm going to stop sharing there and leave because we have 5 minutes left and answer questions. Okay, I see some questions in the chat.
Diane,
Yeah.
There's one there about, do you have guidelines for when we start bringing our child to an IEP meeting? It's appropriate to have the child make an initial appearance. If they're like in middle school, they're younger, you can have them come in, introduce them, let them meet everybody, and then leave. It's starting them to feel what an IEP meeting is like. Also, I'm Determined it's an excellent website with videos and different resources on how to prepare your child for an IEP. They can even make their own slide presentation about their IEP. So that's something that I know this one mom who wrote to me, I could work with her on that. Someone else, I think that was the only one.
There's a question, are there specific resources for job career coaches? Do you mean helping the individual find the right job or career? Joyce mentioned a couple of resources in her presentation that I think are shared on the slides. Oh, to go with them to jobs. So, yeah, job coaches. So the employment providers that I mentioned, and again, we have a list on our website, you can see in our resource library, that those employment providers provide job coaches to help them do DARS. The Department of Aging and Rehab Services will provide job coaches to do situational assessments, to get to try out different jobs and help them kind of determine what's a good path for them. But DARS would be the starting point for that.
For younger children at home, give them jobs to do. One job, two job. So to get them used to taking directions, following, you can make a task analysis to show them outlining what they have to do. But the more responsibilities you give them at home is a chance for them to learn and take pride in what they're doing. It is a job, even though it's volunteer.
Joyce, there's a question in the chat. Are there resources for how to explain your child's disability to them, particularly when they don't have a specific genetic disorder?
Again, I would refer parents to go to I'm Determined. It's an amazing tool, and it's broken out for parents, teachers, students, and there are videos on there. And I will look for some others if I can. And that was from Megan Lustig. Okay, if I can find some others, can you tell me what school your child is in? Is it one of the Catholic schools? I could reach out directly through the school. Okay, all right, let me see what I can find out. But there are resources.
Any other questions?
And they have our contact information if they'd like to reach out to us.
Yeah, feel free to reach out anytime with questions.
And if any of the Catholic high schools, if you ever want to have a parent group, I did it once at Bishop O'Connell. If you'd like to come together and have, a meeting at the school and we can talk about some of these resources, I would be happy to do that.
Okay, well, thank you all so much. And thank you, Diane and Joyce, for this wonderful presentation. I just wanted really quick to throw it out there. Does anybody have resources maybe for answering that question of how to explain a child's disability to them? I think all of us have a lot of experience as parents, right? We've all come from different things. So if anybody in this group actually has any resources, please feel free to throw it in the chat or just raise your hand, pop up on the screen. We're moving into a break now, and we'll resume the next sessions at 11:30. So we have a couple minutes if anybody has suggestions they want to share.
Yeah. And Carmen, I would again suggest the I'm Determined website because they have a lot of information on there, and also Pizzi may have something too.
Good, awesome. Well, thank you, Joyce. And I think you can even go on Instagram. I've seen a couple times there's librarians that have these little videos that show like 5 or 6 different books about being different, or I have ADHD, I have this, and there may be something that fits. Question about, are there social groups in Fairfax after for higher functioning young adults? Diane and Joyce.
I know Jewish Social Services does offer something, and so you could reach out to them and look what they're offering, and maybe some other resources are out there first. And also ask the CSB, ask your support coordinators what information they have that they could provide to you.
That building social connection sheet that Joyce referenced on one of her slides, and it's in our resource library. There's different groups on there for people of all types of abilities.
There's also a group that just started up. It's called A Purposeful Day. They were one of our exhibitors, and it'll be in the slide deck, but they can be a resource for you too. I think they're Arlington more, but I think not too far from Fairfax.
And our Stamping Grounds has social groups in Arlington, but they also have residences in Fairfax as well. So I would look at those too. And so does ECNV. The Independent Center of Northern Virginia has meetup groups where they like go out to dinner.
And ECNV at one time was trying to organize some type of social group gatherings for students, but then with COVID, I don't know whatever happened, but reach out to them.
Yeah, they still do too. And again, that's on that sheet, that building social connections sheet. There's a list in there. Oh, can you put those in the chat? It's all on the building social connections link,
which is in the
which is in the slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everyone who registered for this conference will receive a link to these slides for every presentation. So if there was a simultaneous presentation that you wanted to go to, you'll also receive the slides for that. So you can rest assured you will get it all.
Any of the handouts, Carmen, any of the handouts that I showed that are not linked on the slides will be given out at the schools at a later date.
Okay, that's at the Catholic high schools. If you're not in one of those, just reach out to us and we'll see how we can get that material to you. Okay. Well, I would like to thank everybody that came today and really appreciate all of you spending some time with us on this day and being flexible with the format change. And thank you to Diane and Joyce for all of the resources and information you have given us. I look forward to sitting down with that slide deck and just clicking on every link and pulling the information that I need. So thank you so much. And hopefully we see you all at the next session. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.